Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Bob.
No worries.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show, Cactus and Canucks. I'm Loretta Sernowski from Remax Fine Properties, live in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I am here with two fabulous sports celebrities from the CFL. Can you guys introduce yourself, please?
You go ahead first, Bob.
Thanks, Michael. My name is Bob McGregor. I am the stadium announcer for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and I've been involved in TV and radio here in Winnipeg for, way too long.
Bob does a great job. I miss his tones from the last couple of years. I am a broadcaster in Saskatchewan of 28 years. I did rider broadcast for 20. And the last 2 years, 2022, 2023, the voice of the team, and now doing my own thing online, a podcast called Ballsy Uncut. And then the CFL dropped the "Our balls are bigger" slogan back in the day because technically the CFL and the NFL have the same size balls, but NCAA, where my kid played in North Dakota, and U Sports have different size balls. So I trademarked the slogan "Our balls are bigger," and I do a post-game show after every Rider game. Our balls are bigger post-game show. So there you go.
So I was actually just talking to my friend from Regina because I said, I remember my friends lived on Dudney and we used to walk home after the game and sit on their deck and have a Molson and listen to Rider Roundtable.
Yes. Yeah.
There is more Rider Roundtable?
Oh no, they still have the Rider Roundtable on the broadcast partner. But I just that's what a lot of people know me from because of the 20 years I did it. 18 were taking drunk callers and wild callers after the game and upset callers, and so it was fun. I thought, okay, let's get back to that. Now, right at this point, I don't take calls. That'll be the next evolution next year. But usually, what I do is I'll get a guest. Like last couple of weeks, I've been joined by the former Bengal Blue Bomber Alouette Kyrie Zaber, the Angry Bird. He and I have been talking back and forth. Like he joins me, Manny Arsenault. I've had Isaac Harker, a bunch of different guys join me on the show, and we break it down and take some. In the chat room, we take your texts and stuff like that. So,
Bob, do you guys have in Winnipeg something like that as well, where the fans can call in after the game?
There's a call-in show after every game on CJOB. And that's well listened to, not only from those leaving the stadium, but also those who are at home and listening to the game, prior to. But it's a very diverse crowd here. So there's fans who never come to the game. They watch them all the time on TV, and then there's others who they got to live the experience. They have to be at the stadium, and that's part of the reason that we've got probably the biggest crowd size in the CFL.
Well, let's talk about that because it never used to be like that before. So I'm happy for you guys, Bob, but I think the riders are suffering a little bit on what's going on in Saskatchewan. Ballsy, do you have a comment for that?
Well, suffering in relative terms, like the Riders still have the second best attendance in the CFL. But Bob is absolutely right. There's only, like last week they had 26,000 at the game. The stadium holds 33,500. And I remember when people were bitching and moaning, why didn't we put a roof on it and why didn't we make it 40,000? And I said, because it's the flavor of the month right now. Like the Riders were under Jim Hobson's tutelage, God rest his soul. And if you see over my shoulder, I got the jersey here signed by Jim Hobson. That's one of my greatest memories. I know you gave us some preamble questions. One of my greatest memories was I sat at his lakefront house for 3.5 hours with him and his significant other, Brenda, before he passed away, when he was still in good spirits and in relatively okay health. And we shared some stories and he signed my jersey that I got from the team and I became the voice. But in his era, from about 2007 to 2014, that was the golden era of Rough Rider football since I've been alive as a 52-year-old man. They were hot off the field, in the community, in the stands, and on the field. And when Taylor Field closed and we opened the new stadium, we passed the torch over to Winnipeg. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers are the only real team with true home field advantage. Now, let me say this before Rider fans burn me to the ground. The Riders have the best fan base in the CFL. They travel the best. There's no secret why the Riders were in the Touchdown Atlanta game 2 years in a row, which I was fortunate enough to go to, because the CFL with limited marketing knew the Riders, the tractor factor, they travel. Okay, so I think the Riders are the lifeblood, Rider pride. But for whatever reason, we can get into it maybe, they're staying away right now, but the mantle has been passed. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, because of Princess Auto Stadium, it's like an NFL stadium. It's closer to the field. It's built up and down. They got that, I'm joking, Bob, but they got that cheaper tin roof at the top that keeps all the sound in, and they have home field advantage. So I tip my hat to Bomber fans. Now, I will say this. They're going because they're winning. And it's fun to go when you win, and it's fun to go to the Rum Hut. If they weren't winning, there wouldn't be lineups at the Rum Hut. I think Bob and I can be in agreement on that.
You think that's
not quite. Not quite.
No, fans are, I think both the Riders and the Bombers were alike in that we have tough fans that can, it doesn't matter what kind of weather, they just dress warm and get out there. We probably have the two best teams as far as fan loyalty. And I know for sure the Riders, I'm sure the Bombers too, but whenever you travel somewhere and wear your Rider jersey, like I remember going to Dallas to a Cowboys game and I wore my Rider jersey. And a guy from Halifax, I was at a real estate convention. He said, "Why are you wearing that?" And I said, "You'll see." I said, for sure I could hear "Go Riders" like across 3 rows.
Bob, what's interesting, sorry, Loretta, Bob, what's interesting I find is the Jets left Winnipeg and they came back and they're struggling to sell out games. They're getting 12,500. They're the best team in hockey right now. But the Winnipeg Blue Bombers don't have any problem. What is behind that, do you think?
There's a couple of things. I think first and foremost, the season is just getting underway for hockey. So with limited amounts of money for entertainment, people are choosing to go to the Bombers right now because they're winding down their season and this is their last opportunity. I think you'll see that the attendance numbers for the Jets will go up starting, sort of the end of November, beginning of December. This is a pretty hot Jets team this year, so I would be surprised if the numbers stay low.
That's good to hear. So you guys, let's get back to football. Let's talk about the current season and the standings. Can you both answer, what do you feel is the biggest factor for your team as far as that you feel is going to carry them through for a win?
Bob, you go first.
Yeah, I'll say this. It's been a tale of two mirror opposites, really. Saskatchewan started really strong. They won both their preseason games, and they went 4-0 before dropping their first game in, I think it was mid-July. And then they kind of hit a wall. They went 5-7-1 before they got another win in the third week of September, and then they sort of picked things up and ended, with a respectable 9-8-1 record. Winnipeg, like almost the complete opposite. So they rested most of their starters in the preseason. They lost both of those games. Then they limped to an 0-4 start before they started picking things up, split the next 4 games, went on an 8-game winning streak, and finished with the best record in the West, 11-7. So one team kind of lost steam as the season progressed. The other picked up momentum. Really, though, despite all of that, both these teams are pretty evenly matched.
Yeah, I would concur with what Bob said. It's really interesting. I think BC and Saskatchewan missed their opportunity, I feel, in a way, because the Winnipeg Blue Bombers were slow out of the chute for one reason or another. They had a lot of injuries, and things just didn't go their way at the start. And then the Riders hit when in your life would you see a football team go 0-7-1 and still get a home playoff game in Saskatchewan? That's almost unheard of. And so the Riders got a home playoff game, but I'll tell you what, they could be kicking themselves, say, about 8:30, now that Saskatchewan and Winnipeg are on the same time, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, about 8:35, they could be kicking themselves that they didn't finish higher in the standings, because they had every opportunity, and this is the toughest place to win a road game in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too.
Now, Bob, you said both teams are pretty evenly matched, and I just took a look this morning at the stats, and so yeah, you're right. The points per game are pretty. Saskatchewan's a little bit ahead. Winnipeg's a little bit ahead on the yards per game, passing yards per game. The Riders are a bit ahead there, but rushing yards, Winnipeg is quite a bit ahead of Saskatchewan.
They've got a very balanced offensive attack, and so they can kill you in the ground game, they can kill you in the air, and they can kill you on the short passes as well as the deep ball, and that makes it so much harder for a team to try and defend against. If there's a team in the league that could probably match them defensively, it probably would be Saskatchewan, and that's why I say they're pretty evenly matched that way.
Yeah, so there's a little asterisk beside the running stats for Winnipeg. If you go a little deeper, Brady Oliveira hasn't been dominating against Saskatchewan, as Bob kind of alluded to. I don't think he has over 50 yards rushing in any of the games against Saskatchewan this year, in the 3 meetings they've had this year. Where he has excelled, though, is coming out of the backfield. He's like the check down guy, and he's a big mismatch with the linebackers. The Rough Riders have been, if I'm not mistaken, number 1 or right there against the run this year. So I really think, Bob, maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, I really think it's going to come down to the running games. Can the Riders get A.J. Ouellette continuing to... A.J. Ouellette hasn't done much for the Rough Riders this year in the regular season.
Not against Winnipeg, yeah.
That's right. Kind of like G. Roy Simon in 2013. The Riders brought him in when he was let go by Wally Buono. Everybody's like, why do we bring this guy in? He only has 600 yards. But he showed great leadership in the locker room. He's the guy that went to Darian Durant and said in the West semifinal, do it with your legs if you have to. And we remember what Darian did in 2013 in that West semifinal against BC, 90 yards rushing. And then in the Grey Cup, he got his only 2 Grey Cup touchdowns. Well, A.J. Ouellette didn't do much this year. He came in, I think, with 2 shot hips, but had a 6-game stint on the IR, and he comes back and has 2 big touchdowns that helps them beat the BC Lions. If the Riders are going to win, they're going to have to get that running game going. And I think Winnipeg, conversely, because the Riders are one of the teams that doesn't need to bring extra pressure to get to Zach Collaros.
Yeah.
And what about the quarterback showdown?
Sorry?
What about the quarterback showdown?
You know, I got to say this. Trevor Harris gets the ball out quick. He checks down pretty smoothly. He isn't afraid to pull it down and scramble on his own. Zach Collaros, on the other hand, he this year has been a threat from just about any distance on the field. He's got a fleet of top-notch receivers. He has time. He'll use Oliveira in the backfield for extra blocking. In past years, his scrambling has been more about, buying time to find an open man downfield. But this year, he's even been running the ball, which is kind of crazy. Like, he finished with his second best average running yards, 7.3 yards a carry. So you get 2 quarterbacks who are veterans, who know what it's like to perform under, championship type pressure. This could go either way. I just don't see a scenario where one quarterback's going to dominate the other.
Yeah, so I agree with everything Bob just said. Zach Collaros is a stud. He's been a stud since he got there, but he didn't have a studly year this year by his level of performance. He started slow like the team, picked up towards the end. Trevor Harris is an all-star, and he missed 6 games after suffering his second straight bad knee injury. Missed all but 3 games last year, missed 6 games this year, and was an all-star. I would say though, down the backstretch, the 2 best quarterbacks in the CFL, take Bo Levi Mitchell out of it, Chad Kelly, whether you like him or not, and Trevor Harris. Those have been the 2 best quarterbacks so far, and definitely last week they looked great, lights out. Now, it's a totally different ball of wax, 1-game showdown in Winnipeg. It's like going into the twilight zone. Riders haven't won there in 8 straight games. It could definitely come for the Riders to win. This is what has to happen: 250 yards on through the air for Trevor Harris and a couple of touchdowns, just like he's been doing, and get a nice ground game of about 100 yards, and then the Riders have a pretty good chance of winning this game.
Do you feel that the home field advantage is going to play a part in this game?
Me?
Yeah, Bob, go ahead.
Home field is huge. Winnipeg's Princess Auto Stadium is home to the loudest fans in the CFL. And make no mistake, they will be loud on Saturday. Nearly 30,000 West playoff tickets were already sold before Saskatchewan and BC even played last week. So there won't be as many green jerseys in the crowd as we'd usually see, say, for a Banjo Bowl. Rider fans will still represent, but their numbers won't play much of a factor in this weekend's game.
Yeah, I think home field advantage is real. Now, I need to be clear about this. This is not meant to say negatively, okay? But I've talked to other coaches in the league over my time in the league. Nobody, and I mean nobody, works the officials better than Mike O'Shea. On the field, behind the scenes, Wade Miller does it to a T. We've seen it already this year in front of the camera, in front of the microphones. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they're like the Kansas City Chiefs of the NFL. They find a way to get it done. They're really good in pressure games, and they somehow get the call when they need the call, whether that's right or wrong. And I have no dog in this fight. I'm sitting here honestly with a Rider jersey hanging over my shoulder, but I'm not telling you I'm cheering for the Riders. I just want to see a good football game. But it's undeniable. The Winnipeg Blue Bombers have something going there. And so, yes, home field advantage is real, but there's something that you need to think about here. In the last game, the Banjo Bowl, it was the Bombers that had to take a timeout because of the crowd noise. And it wasn't in the crowd. Like, what I mean is, they took the timeout because the Riders never spent the timeout because of crowd noise. They never took an offside penalty because of crowd noise. They never took a delay of game. Riders handled the crowd noise the last time well. The only problem is, like Bob points out, this is a whole different level now. This is for all the marbles to go to the Grey Cup.
I'm going to say this too, so noise, yes, has an effect on the players on the field, but I'm not talking about drowning out Saskatchewan. More so, it's about energizing the home team, and that's something that you can't actually measure, but you know that it's happening. And when the crowd is like, when you go to a game, nothing beats live, especially for football, right? And in this particular situation, it's the first time the crowd starts to get noisy after the anthem, and you can feel the hair on the back of your neck sticking up. And then the first time that they shout out first down, and it's just everybody's in sync. All of that energy is palpable in the stands and on the field. It does make a difference.
Yeah.
So, to your earlier comment, Mike, on the referees, the officials in the game, I can see your perspective. The reality is, because I mean, hanging out with guys like Ken Lazarick, I know that nobody's going to make a dent in their perception of the game or how it needs to be called. The reality is this: for the last 5 years, for sure, under Mike O'Shea, what's been hammered into the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is to play close to, if not actually, error-free football.
Mhm.
And that's what's kept them in the win column, because they're just not getting as many penalties, and that leads to better field advantage, and it leads to more success, from first down to goal line. So yeah, I agree that it can feel that way sometimes, especially when the calls are going against your team, whether that's Saskatchewan or Hamilton or anybody else, doesn't matter. But the reality is this team has a discipline and a responsibility that really shines across the whole league.
No, and I can't disagree. They're a well-coached team. They've got arguably the best coach in the league, and it's not even particularly close. So I can't disagree with that.
Yeah.
So, as you guys know, rivalries make for great sports, and this is a good rivalry. This podcast is being broadcast to a bunch of groups that are Canadians living in the U.S., many who have lived here for a long time. Some may have forgotten about the rivalry, but I don't know if you guys know the answer to this question. But how exactly did that rivalry start?
Bob, do you know?
So I can tell you that the Labor Day Classic dates back to 1949, 75 years ago. There were some years they didn't play, but that's a long time. We're talking, not only do you remember the rivalry, but it goes back to your parents and even your grandparents, right?
Yeah.
It's a storied tradition. There's not a lot of hate between the teams and the fan base, but there is the bragging rights, and there is that, good-natured, competitive. I don't even know the right word, but it's like there's a reason why these two teams inspire each other and draw the highest viewership on TV and the highest in crowd stadium group, right?
Yeah.
So you guys are right in there. So I've always been curious about this for the mentality of the players because of the rivalry. Do they talk about the rivalry at all?
Well, for a lot of the American guys that come up here, either if they're in Winnipeg or Saskatchewan, and guys have played in both sides. Some guys played in Winnipeg. It's a small league, so if you're here long enough, you probably play for most of the teams.
Right.
They say this is as close to a collegiate atmosphere as you'll ever get, and I can speak to that with my kid just coming playing in North Dakota. We went to a game. He played in Nebraska 2 Labor Days ago, and sitting there amongst 90,000 fans, it was an atmosphere, crazy atmosphere. And that's about as close as you're going to get in the CFL. Labor Day and the Banjo Bowl, that's what they say. And actually, Bob, I don't know if you agree or not. I don't like these teams meeting more than 2 times in the regular season. They did 1 more time this year. I don't like that. Just keep it 2, and then if we get you in the playoffs.
Yeah, although historically, meeting 3 times when there's that much of a clash between the fan bases, I don't know that it hurts. I don't think it hurts the league. I don't think it hurts the teams.
Yeah.
And it inspires a little bit more of the controversy and a little bit more of that, we're better than you guys. I don't think it hurts.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying it hurts. I just like to have, I just kind of like, listen, from from my perspective, I don't have a problem with Bob McGregor. In fact, I booked a trip to come to Winnipeg to the Nordic Spa in December. I'm bringing my,
nice.
I'm bringing my family there. Okay. So it's not like I don't like Winnipeg. Okay. But people in Winnipeg don't like Regina because they don't like when Reginas say you're just a big Regina except you have an NHL team. And then Winnipeggers call Reginans and Saskatchewanians hillbillies, henceforth Troy Westwood the Banjo Bowl. But what both sides don't understand is we're probably exactly the same. Like we're basically the same. We're in the middle of Canada. Nobody really gives a crap about us except for us. And so it gives us... And it's cold, and as Bob said, It's bragging rights. It's bragging rights. If we're going to be the same, if I'm the small brother, because we have 250,000 here or 1 million in our province, as you know, Loretta, and they have like 750,000 in Winnipeg, we're the big brother. They want to hold the mantle as long as they can. And we're like, no, it's our turn. So that's kind of where we're at. But we're the same people. We just don't like each other. But we do like each other.
Yeah, I would say there's a grudging respect for the other guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, not if you're
Sorry,
a fan
Loretta.
sitting in the stands. I know that for sure from past experience. So that's a good segue into the state of the CFL right now. How do you guys feel that? How do you feel that's going? And is the CFL in a strong position moving forward?
Bob, you go first.
I think so. I've been hearing doom and gloom stuff for decades, right? The league remains solid. More and more young people are coming to games now. The ratio of men to women now is closer than ever in terms of fans in the stands. Each market has their ups and downs, but the CFL remains an integral part of the country. And I think it's only going to get better as we get into more, opportunities for streaming and drawing in a bigger global audience.
How do I put this? It's strong in Winnipeg. It's lukewarm in Regina, Saskatchewan. Maybe that's because of the economy.
That might be a little too far. It's like their numbers are not that far off. It's not like you're only drawing 9,000 people.
No, but it's certainly not where it was, and it's not trending in the right direction. Let's just put it that way. It's not, and some of that is to do with inflation and a lot. Not half the crowd, but a chunk of the crowd travels from far and wide and high gas prices and everything. Whereas in Winnipeg, they have 750,000 people. They don't have to travel as far to go to a Blue Bombers game.
Or they're hopping a bus.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So there's that. Montreal got solid. Like, I think I agree with Bob in the solid ownership aspect. I think there's three troubled areas. We need you used to be able to say this. Well, if those Eastern teams are struggling, at least we got the West. Well, Winnipeg's strong. Saskatchewan is okay, but they got to fix some things. Edmonton was a mess. Hopefully it's going to be cleaned up with Larry Thompson, because it is sad what's happened to that Edmonton football team. They used to get 40,000 fans. Now they can barely get 15,000. And Calgary, I heard somewhere, just got awarded the 2026 Grey Cup. And my son just played with the Dinos. They need a heck of a lot of improvements at that stadium, and they need to market that team better. So and Dorman's done a good job in BC, but those, three of the prairie teams are kind of, I don't know. So I would give it a 7 out of 10 right now, but I'm a Canadian lover of Canadian football. I want to see more Canadians in the league, to be quite honest with you.
What about Ottawa? You didn't say Ottawa.
Well, Ottawa's another troubled spot. That's a fickle sports town as it is. Even when the Sens are doing well, it's a tough place to get fans to go to. Maybe it's the stadium, but Ottawa was strong for a while. They've had some down years, but they had a good year for a good chunk of this year, and they averaged under 20,000, like just around 19,000, which is kind of, I would keep an eye on that. That's what I'd say. But Bob, I don't know if you agree with this or not. Take Winnipeg and Saskatchewan out of this. I've said this for a long time. I think owners need to wrap their brains around the fact that people are being selective with their money. They got big screens. You're right. Being there live is better, but it's hard to get them there. So how do you get them there? I think they need to budget for between 18 and 22,000 fans. Take Regina and Winnipeg out of it. How do you feel about that?
So I can remember the times when Winnipeg, we were lucky if we were to be able to get 16, 17,000 to the old Canadian Stadium. And I'm going back to the Reinbold days. It was interesting to watch because they were usually in it until, the last 5 minutes of the game, but then they would lose. There was, I remember Saskatchewan back in the 80s, well after Lancaster had left. They were struggling to keep 22, 24, 25,000 in the stands.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Toronto. Toronto's always had a problem getting people. The only time they didn't was when John Candy and Wayne Gretzky co-owned that team, and that lasted like a season. So historically, you have issues with the attendance, but it's not just the attendance. What saved the CFL current is the TSN deal, right? The
Right.
TV broadcast deal. And that now it didn't matter if you had the people or you didn't have the people in the stands, you were still doing well because
Mm-hmm.
you could afford to pay the players what they deserved. I think that's going to change. Part of it is, social media, but more so, I think that the next big step for the league is to get um, into platforms like, whether that's Prime or it's Netflix or something. It's the broadcast rights, right? The more eyeballs, the more subscribers, the more streaming platforms, the bigger the audience, and that'll mean more money for the league and its players. Frankly, the NHL could survive if no one showed up in any of the arenas just because of all the contracts that they've got out, especially along the Eastern Seaboard. It's the same in the CFL. This is driven right now by both broadcast rights and audience because we
Mm-hmm.
need fans in the stands to buy the popcorn and the donuts and whatever else they're selling, right? If you don't have that, it's hard to make it work. But I
Right.
think that's going to change, and I think it's slowly starting to wind its way through for the CFL, kind of the last to get onto that bandwagon. But I think that new platform is going to be where the money is going to be made and where the equity is going to start to take place, because now you can be in Germany and watch the CFL, you can be in Australia and watch the CFL, and that's going to be the difference.
Do you think that with fantasy football, that maybe more eyeballs have switched over to NFL and college ball?
We've
There's always been fantasy. I don't know.
Yeah, well, we have lost. We kind of lost. Like Bob is right. We're getting more young people back, which is great. When I watch an Argos game, it's great to see younger people there because it's affordable in Toronto to go to a CFL game. It really is,
Yeah.
and to see the younger fans banging drums and everything in Winnipeg, I love it. That's what we need, and we saw a little bit of that in Saskatchewan. But we lost. We lost the. I don't say lost, but there's a segment
We
of the
lost the generation.
yeah,
for
we
sure.
did. We lost
For
the
sure.
20. We lost, and I think we can all agree here. I'm in my 50s. I won't ask your age, but we're not in our 20s. I think it's safe to say we're all not in our
Yep.
20s. Okay, so 20-year-old people to early 30s, they don't have money to throw around. They will go to concerts. They will save money to go to NFL games. They will go to an NHL game. They will go here locally to like Country Thunder or whatever the heck they call it. If it's something they want to go to, they'll find money to do it. But how do you get them to do it? You got one thing I love about Winnipeg. I always loved it. Or Calgary, even though they don't go to the games. You pull up there and there's tailgating, and they are loving it. In Saskatchewan, for whatever reason, we have our heads up our ass, if I could say that. Where's the lift the bylaws and let them there's a perfect parking lot outside of Mosaic Stadium where the hockey rink is, the Brandt Center. Let's have a party out there, and let's make it a party, and then you show up for the game. That's part of the allure of the Winnipeg's Princess Auto Stadium. You're at the rum hut, you're drinking, you're having a great time, your team's winning. Where else would you want to be? So
Well, it's funny too, because like a lot of fans who watch the games on TV, they're like, "Oh, there's hardly anybody at the stadium." They're all on the concourse level. They've got a seat, but they're not in it.
Well, but so back to what Loretta was saying. Yes, here's something to consider. In 1959, the CFL had 9 teams, and the NFL had 12 teams.
Yep.
Let's fast forward to 2024. The CFL has 9 teams, and the NFL has 32 teams. Now, I'm not. Yeah, go ahead.
Put it in perspective, though.
Yeah.
So in the 50s, 60s, and 70s,
Yep.
at least until the mid 70s, the money was all up here.
Yep.
So the best players when they finished their college in the States, they came to Canada to play because that's where the money was.
Right.
That was simply because they hadn't got their
Yeah.
together in the AFC and NFC to pool their resources and figure out a way to get some good TV contracts.
Right.
Once they did that in the States, then the money was in the States. And so the NFL grew and the CFL stayed where it was. And that's really the only reason that you see a difference, right? So what's happened in the States? So for the NFL, you have multiple broadcast rights. So you have, ABC versus CBS trying to get eyeballs on the next NFL game. So they're promoting the league just by trying to promote the show that's coming up on Friday night. And so, or on, Sunday at 2:00. So the competition becomes less so about the NFL advertising a lot and more so about these TV rights holders advertising to try and beat each other out. That leads to better production on the field. It leads to better production of, highlights. It leads to better production of, close-ups and fan reactions and miking up the players and all that sort of stuff. So the U.S. production value has multiplied rapidly over the last 30 years, 40 years, whereas the CFL has barely made any changes to
That's
their
right,
production
and
value.
you're absolutely right about that. And I listen. I don't want to compare. It's apples to oranges. They have 340 million. We have 40 million. It's not even in the same ballpark. But I do think this. You've mentioned fantasy football, Loretta. We need more teams. And that's one of the X's against Randy Ambrosi. He promised a 10th team when he took over. Now, it's not just on him alone, but we've been talking about the Atlantic frickin' Schooners for 40 years. I was down in Halifax for 2 years. They barely promoted the thing. And yes, they got good crowds, but once again, it was because the riders traveled. It wasn't because of, Halifax was all jacked up. They haven't made a concerted effort, and they're not going to end up with a team in Victoria. You go to school or you die in Victoria. It's either young or old, and they're not. It's not happening. So we just abandoned Atlantic Canada? There doesn't seem to be a plan. Here's my plan. I don't really have all the nuts and bolts ironed out, but I was just spending 4 years in the United States watching along the northern border states, okay? And I know how they love to spend their money. St. Louis seems like they'll support any football, so that could be a 10th team. But how about we go northern United States? North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, where we get a lot of our American players from. There's, people in North Dakota know where Winnipeg is. They know where it is now because they have been home. They drive up for games. Why don't we look there? This league needs more teams. Now, that doesn't mean I want the Canadian ratio abandoned and all that stuff. And our Canadian players are getting better and better so they can compete. And actually, Canadian
going to the U.S. They're not even playing in Canada.
Yeah, that's right. So Canadian, and here's something too. When we had American expansion, which went way too south, the Canadian teams using Canadian players that Americans didn't use, it was a 500 record. Canadian teams were 500 even back then. So there's ways around it, I think. But bottom line is this: we need more teams. We need more teams. There needs to be some sort of interest. Generated money, excitement. You can't have the same teams playing each other. I'm sorry, that's not going to attract the young guys. They already got Bob, Ballsy, and Loretta. We need Jim, Jeff, Steve, Scott, the 20-year-old that wants to drink, that wants to play fantasy football, that wants to do that. How do you do that with a 9-team league? It's lame.
So
I think
once bitten, twice shy, though.
idea.
What's that? Sorry, Bob?
Once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah.
Because it didn't work the first time they moved into the States, there's less openness amongst the powers that be in the league to even consider looking south again. I'm not sure I agree with that. Like I hear what you're saying, and I think part of the problem was the first time they went deep into the States, where a lot of people don't even know where Canada is. I'm sorry, but Americans don't even know their own geography, never mind Canada.
Yep.
So that's the first part of the problem. The second part of the problem was, did they give it a fair shot? part of the reason for going into the States was because the CFL at that time was on pretty shaky ground. And if they didn't inject some new money into the league might have folded.
Right.
So that was the reason to do it the first time.
Mhm.
This time, I think it has to do with more of a strategic growth element, and I don't know if they're ready to do that just now. But I think they should look at it.
Yeah, okay, and that's very.
I remember they were talking about the schooners, like that was going to be a big thing. I mean, the Maritimes they don't have any sports except curling to watch.
Yeah.
Like I think, I mean, I've been to Nova Scotia tons of times, and Moncton and Newfoundland. Like, I think those people would love. I mean, maybe they might not know anything right now, but if they
I think
had,
lacrosse is popular down there.
Yeah, and they've got semi-pro soccer that's pretty that's picking up in Halifax, and they had talked about maybe sharing a stadium, but it's just it's a different mentality in Canada. We don't have like sports. We like sports, but we don't love sports. Do you know what I mean? To the point where we're just going to spend money left and right. Where in the States, it's a totally different mentality. So
that's another part of this issue too. So in the States, development of players from a very young age, like 5 and 6 years of age, is commonplace throughout the States, right? You can go into the smallest little town and all their high school has a football team. Their elementary school is already teaching kids about football. In Canada, it's a much smaller platform. So players might play through till grade 12, but there's only a handful of teams in the university league. So
that's true.
Most of those guys aren't going to see any football after they graduate grade 12. So it's an infrastructure that's been slow to grow, and it's another part of the puzzle, right? There's no one thing that's going to fix everything, but it's a matter of looking at it in a holistic fashion rather than just a little piece here and a little piece there.
Yeah,
I don't know that the U.S. will save us, but it's part of the plan, right?
Absolutely. And this is back to Bombers Riders. This is one thing I respect about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, okay? And we're starting to see a little bit of across the league now, like Jordan Maximick's a Canadian offensive coordinator. Mark Mueller, Ron Lancaster's grandson, is the offensive coordinator in Saskatchewan.
Bobby Dice is the head coach.
Yeah, the two greatest Rough Riders of all time are Americans, and their statues are out front of Mosaic Stadium, okay? Yeah. And so I'm not against Americans. I love the American players. Absolutely. They're vital. They're generally the star power, although we have great Canadian. First time ever, we've had a Canadian lead the league in rushing in Oliveira and receiving Justin McInnes. But I would say this. There's the other piece of this puzzle is, in America, you are growing. It's as Bob talked about. It's bells and whistles. It's I think of John Randall. He was a great Minnesota Viking, and I watched The Football Life. And he grew up with 8 siblings in a shack, and they used to bathe in the middle of the room in a metal basin. Okay, imagine that. And this guy grew up to be one of the greatest players in NFL history, and he got there because that was his way out, and he was thinking about it. And college was glamorized, and when he gets to the NFL, they know who John Randall is. Who knows who half the Bisons, Rams, Huskies are? We don't do a good enough job cultivating it at our level in the university sports or junior football, and then they get to the CFL, and they make a name for themselves, but it takes a while, and it's a lot of it has to do with American coaching bias. It really does. And this is what I like about the Bombers. Mike O'Shea, Kyle Walters, Wade Miller. Those guys are Canadian. We need more Canadians in the Canadian Football League. To go from 10 Canadian starters to 7 Canadian starters, to me, Bob, we talk out of both sides of our mouth. We either have lots of Canadian talent or we don't have lots of Canadian talent. So if we have lots of Canadian talent going to the States to play, why don't we have more Canadian starters? A young kid will grab it. I'll tell you this right now. If I can just give me 1 second here. My son went to the United States, to North Dakota. He played with Evan Holm. He got Evan Holm, and he got a bunch of the guys turned on to the CFL. They used to come to my kids' apartment and watch the CFL. And Evan Holm didn't even know much about the CFL till he hung out with my kid, and then he ends up going to the CFL, and he's a star. Okay, yeah. So where I'm going with this is we got to get away from the whole America's greater than Canada. Do you know if we told a kid that you can play goalie all the way up to your all the way up through university, but you can't play goalie in the pros. You're Canadian. You can't play goalie in the pros. Won't even look at you. No way. We'd be on Parliament Hill. We'd be burning crap to the ground because what do you mean? But a kid can play quarterback his whole life, and then all of a sudden, because he's a Canadian, whatever. We don't even focus on those guys in the combine, and it's the most important position in football. So there's lots of stuff at the grassroots that needs to be fixed before we even talk about, getting young people to come. There's so much. We could talk for 3 hours on the show.
There is, but I put an asterisk beside that too, because a lot of that is American bias.
Yeah,
you have American coaches that come up here. They know nothing about the Canadian. The reason they're here is maybe somebody recommended they check out a Canadian city or look at Canadian football for the first time ever, kind of thing. They're up here, they're coaching, and what do they know? They know the breeding system of Division I in the States and Division II, and they're putting all their money on the American infrastructure because that's what they're familiar with. So I don't know that it's necessarily ignoring the Canadian talent as much as it is going with what you know. And we just haven't, as you said, we just haven't done enough of a job promoting the talent that is coming out of the different universities and colleges, right?
And Bob hit on something that's absolutely it's a generational argument way before me, way after us. The ratio. If we didn't have the ratio, just what Bob said, very few Canadians would be playing in our league. I've asked John Ryan, who's a millionaire. I've asked Brett Jones, who played in the NFL. Both those guys played in the NFL. They said they wouldn't get a sniff. John Ryan couldn't even get an agent. And then he went to Winnipeg, Green Bay, and Seattle. Brett Jones picked up offensive linemen in Weyburn at grade 11, 10 or 11. And same with Brendan Labatt, another former great bomber. And they if a coach from Nebraska didn't have to go scout a Canadian to fill a roster spot, so to speak, to get a Canadian on the field, they wouldn't have gone looking for Brett Jones in Weyburn at the University of Regina. But he gets onto a roster, becomes an outstanding lineman in the Canadian Football League, gets a chance in the NFL, and bounces around and makes life-changing money and gives it back to the University of Regina. Same thing with John Ryan. So that's why a ratio is important.
I agree. Well, you guys, I actually have an idea that can change the CFL. From a girl's perspective, would you like to hear it?
Sure.
Is the rugby team still playing in Regina?
Yep.
Did you know that I was on the board of directors?
I did know that.
And we had a fan issue. No one was coming to the game. No one. So I said, boys, the way to get people in the stands is girls, to get girls there. So we had a fashion show with all the rugby guys, and I filled I think it was the Delta, and with women who all of a sudden had an interest in rugby and started going to the game.
Mm-hmm.
So we need our own Taylor Swift for the CFL.
You got to find. I guess you got to find that. No, I mean, that's you got to. I think where you're going with it is you got to think out of the box with marketing and make it an event. Give them a reason to come to the game besides the game. And fair, I don't know what the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have done, but the Rough Riders have done a good job of holding female football camp nights with their players and showing females the game and some of the strategies with new Canadians. They've done a good job there because you're a new Canadian. You come from Pakistan and India. Cricket. And those type of sports, you drive by this big white-looking spaceship on Elphinstone Street in Regina, and you're like, what the hell is that? But if you oh, got a green jersey. Oh, this is what it is. Oh, maybe I'll come. That's what the CFL is doing. I'll give them kudos to that. At least in Regina. I don't know what Winnipeg's done, but I would assume they're buttoned up there too.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing about attracting any new fan that has not really given us a look yet is to appeal to them on their level. And one of the things that I still wish this league had was a Madden type CFL 25 game or something that could speak to the kids who sit at home on their devices all the time, right? Like that to me would really make a breakthrough with the younger folks.
Like a video game?
Yeah.
Like a video game?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I've asked about that too. Just that we've got a guy in town here, Nelson Hackowich, who used to work with the Riders and stuff. He's on his own now. He's a guy in the off season that actually, just to bide his time, he'll make mock different versions of jerseys and put it all over Twitter and on Facebook. It's garnered some rave reviews. Well, he's taken the video game Madden, and I haven't played video games in 10 years. I feel like as a 40, 50-year-old guy, I feel like kind of a loser playing alone in my basement. But anyway, he's like, well, I'm not saying you're a loser, but I've literally killed afternoons playing video games. I'm like, I probably shouldn't do this. Anyway, but he's taken the video games and he's put the CFL version the best he could. But I agree with Bob. It'd be nice to have one that's actually our own. I just don't know that there's enough of an appetite right now for it. It's one of those things that, like Bob was saying, we gotta, I guess we're in the process of slowly developing, Netflix and all that stuff. And hopefully we can get to that, because that would be something that would get the young kids in for sure.
That would sound, well, that might be, there's lots of, Regina U of R has a good film department and fine arts, so you guys should look to there. There's probably
I will tell you, if it's going to get started, it's going to originate in Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, because like Bob said, it's funny. I don't know if you saw this, Bob, but about a couple of weeks ago, remember Saskatchewan, the Bombers, and Edmonton were all on a bye, and it was the lowest ratings they've had in years. And I'm like, well, no kidding. Don't put Saskatchewan and Winnipeg on a bye on the same weekend.
Yeah. 100%.
Well, the game is this weekend's probably going to be, the feeling's a lot like the American election. No one knows what's going to happen. It's going to be a close race. And we'll move on to the next game. But thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Loretta.
We don't even get to give a prediction.
Oh yes, we better have a prediction. Are we putting some toonies on this?
Well, Bob is the public address voice of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Does a great job. Bob, I know who you got in the game. What's the score going to? Do you have a score in mind?
Well, first, I'm just going to give a slight edge to the Bombers. It's a veteran group. It's made it to the Grey Cup final for the last 4 years running. They want to be back there for year number 5, and they've got 2 appearances that they just went through that didn't turn out the way they wanted. So I think they want to get back there again. I think that this game is going to be close. It's very possible that a Sergio Castillo kick may be the difference right at the end of the game. I got to say Bombers by 6, 5th Grey Cup appearance in 5 years, 28-23 a final. Now
that would be the smart money. And he's got every right to say that. Riders haven't won there in the last 8 games. The Rough Riders, I can't remember. I think it would have been 2003 when Winnipeg was in the East and the Riders did this crossover thing and they beat Winnipeg there with Nealon Green at quarterback. I can't remember another time we beat the Bombers except for the 2007 Grey Cup, when some people will debate Kevin Glenn, if he plays, maybe the Bombers win that game because Ryan Dinwiddie, now the coach of the Argos, was the Bombers quarterback. Once again, I just want a good football game, and I think it will be a good football game, but the Rough Riders have been masters of taking the football away. And Zach Collaros this year has served some up, maybe not lately. I got the Riders winning this game, and I got the Riders winning this game pretty, I think, 32-21. I think it's going to be a bit of it'll be a shocker. That's what I think. I think the Riders end the Bombers streak. But if the Bombers do win, think about this. and this would really bug Rider fans. The Bombers will have made it to 5 Grey Cups in a row. The Riders have been to 5 Grey Cups in their last 27 years. There was a stretch from 76 to 89 where the Riders didn't make where they weren't in the Grey Cup, and there was a stretch where they didn't make an appearance, and there was a stretch when everybody died on 13% of the roster died in that plane crash. This is the longest stretch the Riders have gone without being in a Grey Cup. They have the second longest Grey Cup drought in terms of appearances. BC was 2011, Riders 2013. I think it ends. I just want a good game, and I think I will get a good game. And I think this is the Grey Cup, Bob. I think this game here is the Grey Cup.
I don't doubt that part of it. I'm not sure I agree with everything else you said, but it is going to be a Grey Cup atmosphere.
I wouldn't expect you to agree, and that's okay.
I'm going to make my own prediction. I'm going to also say 32 for the Riders. I wrote that down before, so that's funny that you said that. But I think it's going to be a closer game, like 32-28. So we'll see what happens. And for all of the Canadians or Americans that are CFL fans living in the USA, can you guys let us know how we can watch the game?
It's on TSN, I guess. It's on TSN, right? It's not on CTV. I forgot, Bob. Is it on TSN?
It's on TSN. It's also on CFL Plus. So if you're outside of Canada, you can watch it online. And
can they watch it still at CBS Sports? Like CBS Sports used to. I don't wonder if they're covering the playoffs. I don't know.
They don't have the playoffs, so.
Okay.
They got the Grey Cup, but they don't have the.
Because I just figured this out last weekend. You go to CFL.ca.
Yeah.
And then you just scroll down to where the game is. You have to put in your contact information, email address, your favorite team, and then you'll get the game. So it'll be awesome.
Well, Bob, it was great. If I can say, it was great to talk to you. I just get to hear your voice. I don't get to converse back and forth. So thanks for your time. I appreciate
it. Thank you, Michael.
You guys have a great weekend. Stay warm.
Thanks, Loretta.
Take care, Loretta. Bye, Loretta.